a statement between two variables?
It explains the relationship. It's an educated guess that explains that relationship between two variables. And an educated guess that explains the relationship between two variables. So hopefully, again, you begin to think about some social problem that you might want to study, and then what variables are related to that problem. Whether it's global warming, what are the things that may be causing these earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes to become more severe? Why is it some groups disproportionately suffering from COVID at different rates than others? What class of workers are most affected in the COVID economy? What countries have most effectively fought off COVID? What are the variables that have made their efforts different from maybe than what we've done in the United States? So hopefully, again, it should be an issue that's important to you, but make sure, again, that you start to think about that very quickly. And chapter 1 will give you some insight into how you want to go about thinking about your own social problem. As always, you want to get a sense of what you want to know at the end of each chapter. Make sure that you're taking copious notes. The lectures are being recorded. I'm still trying to find a way to upload it. I had no trouble with this in the fall. I'm not sure what's going on now, but I'll get it worked out in short order. But as we go along, make sure that you take notes. If you have any questions as we go along, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. But always, we won't have a midterm in here, Diamond, but you will have a quiz. It'll be a pop quiz. It could be at any time. Who knows? It could be on Thursday, Nashaya. So you always want to get a sense of what you want to know going into the chapter. And don't just try and memorize. Please, for the love of God, try and really understand. So the first thing we want to be able to identify are the different ways that people decide what's real. Is schizophrenia real? Is COVID real? Is it real that Blacks suffer disproportionate violence at the hand of the police, or is that something that's made up? Is global warming real? Is the growing rates of autism real? Is Joe Biden's political presidential victory real? We can go on and on. So in this way, we use science and scientific thinking to try and determine what's real. Schizophrenia is a real thing. My future psychologists out there, there are scientific ways you can diagnose it. Like where, again, if somebody's here, there are many different types of mental health disorders, but schizophrenia is a specific thing that you can measure. We can measure the impact. We talked about, that was my social psychology class. I was going to say, it can be relative here. In my social psychology class, we talked about how birth order, the variable of a birth order, whether or not you're born the oldest, youngest, or middle child, can have an impact upon adult behavior. So again, what we want to look at, Nashai, is the relationship between variables. So a hypothesis is an educated guess about variables. You haven't tested it yet. You haven't done any research, at least I would imagine. You probably haven't done any research on like how birth order affects human personality. But anybody, give me an educated guess about how you think, and you can even use yourself. If you're the oldest, you're the youngest, or the middle child, how do you think that, and of course in science, let me be clear, there are always exceptions, but on average, do you think that there's any relationship between whether or not you're born the oldest, youngest, or middle child, or what have you, and how you behave as an adult? What's your hypothesis on that? No wrong answers, but what's your educated guess? Tell me the exact relationship. If you're oldest, if I'm the oldest, I expect it, or if I observe the oldest child, I would expect them to behave this way. If I observe the youngest child, I would expect them to behave this way as an adult. What's your hypothesis?
So basically I can say I hypothesize that the oldest child will act more mature, being that their brain is developed more than the younger child.
But how about as an adult? Like, so now all of them are grown. How do you think, what would be?
I mean, like, say for instance, like my sister, like she's 26 and I'm 20. Yeah, I'm 20. So basically, like some theories say that a person's mind doesn't develop until after they're 21.
But how are y'all gonna be y'all like? So my question is, when y'all are both of y'all 40s and 50s,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that the birth? What would your hypothesis be about how you would behave at that stage of your lives? Your brains have already developed, but how would your personalities be different, or would they be? Anybody, a hypothesis about birth order and how that affects adult personality. And this is not a random thing. There is a relationship.
Could it be something like, let's say I don't know, like the one that's younger than, the oldest. The one that's younger than the oldest, like she watched the oldest, go through certain things.
Mm-hmm. But my question, so my question is like, what are the things, and this is really important. This is one of the breakdowns that we often have in social science. And part of this is probably my fault. I'm not asking the question clearly. What are the variables that we're looking at? We're looking at two variables here. So just tell me that first. Because if we don't understand that, the question ain't gonna be clear. So what are the variables? I'm looking at a cause and effect. You don't get anything from getting this wrong, y'all, but try.
The oldest and the youngest child?
So we're working with two variables here, right? In science, we look at the variables we look at a relationship between two variables. So height, like usually the taller you are, the better chance you have of getting to the NBA.
Okay.
So the variables will be height and ability to be into the NBA. Here in this situation, I'm asking you, how does birth order, how does that affect adult personality? Adult personality when people are grown, have gone through all their different life experiences.
Could it do something with it, like could it do something with the environment? Does it relate to the environment anyway?
It could, but I didn't mention the environment. I asked about two variables in particular. So what are the variables that I'm looking at? Let's start there. Because oftentimes, like what happens when I ask these questions is I think that a lot of times people try and get ahead of me and think about what I'm trying to ask. Just listen to exactly what I'm asking. Okay. So the relationship between whether or not you're born the oldest, the youngest, the middle child, does that have an impact upon your adult personality? And in what ways would you hypothesize that it will? Will they be more will one be more outgoing? Will one be more shy? Will one be a little bit more responsible? Will one be a little bit more reckless? Will one be a little bit more averse to taking chances? How does like where you're born, like whether you're born the youngest, oldest, or middle child, how would you hypothesize how that explains how people behave when they're adults? No wrong answers. Who's usually the most responsible?
The oldest. Well, they say the oldest, but I've seen some younger individuals.
There are always exceptions. Always exceptions. On average, though, who is often the most responsible? It's children.
The oldest.
Right. And it ain't because they so special, like they're gonna get the most responsibility. And as a result, oftentimes the oldest children, they have to be a lot more like, they're a lot more guarded, and they have to be mindful of everybody. They're youngest children like myself, we just consider a lot of times temptation what we want to do. So a lot of times we're more risk-taking, we're more averse, we'll take more chances. Not always. And the oldest children, like, so they'll be more responsible, saving their money and stuff. They're gonna be listening to their parents. They follow the rules more. Do your own research on this. I could be making this up, but there's a strong correlation between those things. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. Do other variables have an impact? So like to Jania's question, can we only look at birth order? Of course not. You then got to look at, okay, are they a boy or girl? What kind of household they grew up in? Was it a really religious household? Was it a more secular household? Was it a two-parent household? Was it a single-parent household? Like the responsibilities of an oldest child in a single-parent household, for example, might be different than they would be for a two-parent household. So there are many variables that we can look at beyond that. Don't get it twisted. But what we want to begin to look at is how these relationships have an impact upon things. And best believe that, yes, even the order in which you're born, the same way whether or not you're born a boy or a girl, and whether or not you're born black or white, whether or not you're born rich or poor, whether or not you're born in good health or poor health, can have an effect on your life later on. And we'll talk about that throughout. And these are the kind of things I want you to begin to think about for your own research. We also want to be able to explain the fundamental nature of social science. And then finally, the basic options for conducting social science research, the different methods and how we go about trying to find out things about how we try and find out what's real. The chapter outline I'll go through very quickly. Brief introduction. We talk about how we look for reality. And this is important because one of the great concerns of our society today is that a lot of people be having, like, there's this perception that it'd be multiple truths about stuff. In some cases there are. Now, there are always multiple perspectives. There are always multiple perspectives. So when we talk about something like police brutality and Black people receiving violence at the hands of the police at higher rates than other groups, I mean, that's real. We have data to suggest that. Now, you can have your different perspectives on why that happens, Latasia, but we need to at least begin with the base reality. Like, so again, like, the reality is, I'm sure somebody got on their watch your phone, like, what's the temperature today? Well, probably like 52 degrees or something. Whatever the case, like, that's like, like that's an agreed upon reality. It's not a situation where Latasia, like, Latasia and Diamond may feel more hot or cold, but the temperature is one stagnant thing. And oftentimes today, it becomes very difficult for our society to agree on stuff like that. Latasia, like, well, I feel hot, so like, I feel like it's 70, like, it's great that you feel like it's 70 degrees, but it's really 52. Please keep this in mind. Different perspectives are, again, not only allowed, but encouraged. But we want to be able to, like, really settle on a defined set of facts. We go through this again through the foundations of social science. We go through the early steps of the research process. We'll begin to summarize the chapter, and then hopefully you'll have some questions at the end of the chapter, and I have some for you as well. So, and look, I'm not going to tell you, Latasia, not to study certain things. I want you to focus very closely on everything we talk about, okay? But there are going to be some concepts that I really, really, really need you to focus in on. This concept of empirical is one of them. This is a concept I really need y'all to know and understand. Nashaya, please make note. You're not going to fully get it by looking at my definition. So make sure that you read up on a little bit, and then let's have some further discussions about this as we go along. Does anybody feel like, anybody on the call, would you consider yourself to be in good health right now? Anybody consider themselves to be in good health? I know we got some healthy people out there.
Yes, sir.
Now, Nashaya, what would you use to measure your good health? If you went to a doctor, what would the doctor, what type of things would the doctor show that is a bill of your good health?
Check your temperature.
Good.
Check your weight.
Good.
And check your blood count.
Yes, and your blood pressure.
Yeah, your blood pressure too,
Yeah.
and your heart rate.
Good. So those are all just so that's where we talk about empirical, right? That we can use some type of like a measure that we can observe to see whether or not you're healthy or not. Because this is important, because it may be sometimes, right? I know that we've all probably been here where maybe we think that we're healthy and then something sneaks up on us. That's why it's really important to go to the doctor and get those measurements. I got a physical over the summer, Janiyah, and the doctor said that everything was in pretty good shape, but my creatine levels were really high. I didn't even really know what that meant. But you know what I did?
Mhm.
You
Did
exercise,
your own research.
check your
Yes.
diet.
No, I went and did some research.
Okay.
And it was suggesting like, and I drank a lot of water, so I was shocked, but it was like, I need to probably drink a little bit more. That it was a sign, that I'm maybe getting more dehydrated than I need to be.
Drinking them Red Bulls.
You're absolutely right. Yep. That is exactly what it was. That's scientific thinking right there, Janiyah. One extra credit point, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. These are the and this is important, right? Like real talk. Because we use scientific thinking all the time. So with that, Janiyah, that was the first thing. Okay, like why is this happening? What is this? Is it anything too serious I got to be freaked out about? That's like, nah, but we just let you know so that you be mindful about it. And as I researched and I was like, okay, all right, it's related to dehydration. I say, wait a minute, I drink a gang of water. And it's like, you know what else you drink, dude? Like a lot of Red Bulls. Like this one, Janiyah. I've been better though. I have not been good today. I ain't been good today, but I was really good over the summer and the fall. But those are the kind of things, right? Like if you go to the doctor and you see, okay, you're pre-diabetes, that didn't just happen from nowhere, right? Cause and effect, you can change that. This is really important. And scientific thinking is really important for all people. We talked about this in like Principles of Sociology, the Enlightenment, where you can use scientific thinking to figure out things in your world. But it's especially important for, I believe, for Black people, because the more information you have, the more you can empower yourself. And you definitely want to do this about your health. And I think that by and large, like Black people have, like we still got a ways to go, but statistically speaking, like our habits are, our eating and exercise habits are better than like our parents and grandparents were. We still got some ways to go, but we've taken that information and seeing like diabetes and seeing like family members, getting legs cut off and stuff like that. And we've learned that those things don't just happen from nowhere. So we see the cause and effect, and we have began to try and change the causes. But the causes, us being able to see where the causes come from, Janiyah, that comes from empiricism. That we get data that you can look at, I can look at. That we can go and see if Diamond's blood pressure is too high. We can see that for ourselves. And then we can introduce a variable Diamond to bring that blood pressure down. So empirical, right? So, and one of the things that's important when we talk about, making empirical judgments is, and keep this in mind, when you do your own research, this is really important, Latasia. The first thing, right, your assertion, it needs to be logical and empirical. Empirical means that you have to have some evidence, but then it got to be logical. Like, so again, logical, we know that carbonated drinks, such as Red Bull, Janiyah has observed me firsthand drinking a gang of these throughout the years. So it was logical to her to immediately think, okay, that's probably what was the cause. And that was my theory too. I got another test in December and my levels were lower. So after calming down, so when the semester start back up, it'd be a little bit rough on the brother Nashai. I don't be getting as much sleep. I'm gonna try and keep these in order.
Yeah, you gotta get some sleep.
Yes.
That's important.
It is. Again, there's a variable, right? Like I want y'all to keep this in mind. Like, so the lack of sleep is associated with all types of health things, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I see. Like again, logical. You probably have heard this from a doctor, but I'm sure you've seen this in yourself before, Latasia, where you didn't win a week and you ain't got the kind of sleep that you wanted to. And that body, it breaks down, not because you're you, not because, like, that's what humans do. Some people may have, more limits than others. I generally do not get a lot of sleep, but there's a certain point where my body, or anybody's body, is going to shut down. So this is logical, right? And then it's empirical, meaning that we can see it, that there's evidence for it. I'll come back to this in a moment. But empirical, evidence that we can see, touch, and feel. Ideally, Janaya, empiricism is in the form of numbers. It's in the form of numbers. So it's one thing that you can say that you're a good student, right? But what are some empirical ways that you can demonstrate that? GPA,
work ethic.
No, I can't see that. I can't see that in numbers.
Oh, my bad.
Your grade.
Grades.
Yeah.
Now, what I might be able to see related to work ethic, Nashaya, is like the amount of hours you put in per week, which only you'll know.
Yes, sir.
But I know for myself, like when I was a student, generally for the most part, the more hours I put in, the better grades I got. That wasn't very complicated. The more hours you put in working out, the better shape you're gonna get in. I have not put in as many hours on that front lately, Diamond, but I'm gonna catch up. So it's a lot of different reasons why we really want to get a sense of Divisia of what's real. The more information we get, the better we can predict the future. Like for all of y'all, right? Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, these things that have afflicted our families for generations, these things should not be sneaking up on none of y'all. Do y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I ain't saying you got to be like, eating trees and bark and stuff all the time. Like, I'm not going to do that. But, you do have to be mindful and very conscious about, the things that you put in your body, particularly at this age. Because we can predict the future, Diamond, if you don't do those things. I stress education so much to you, Nashaya, because in America, if you do not have formal education these days, like it's easy to predict your future in America. And don't get it twisted, Latasia, like education, just because you got a college degree, I don't want you to be thinking that alone is going to allow you to live the kind of lifestyle that you want. As we talked about before, there are many variables that influence success in America. But a college degree is a really important one. I wish that wasn't the case. I don't think it should be, quite frankly. If you want to get a college degree, I think that people should, but I do wish we had an economy where people could do other things and not have to force themselves into going to college. We can predict, I know several of you are criminal justice majors. If a shorty gets entangled in the juvenile justice system, if they get institutionalized at an early age, we can often predict their adult criminal justice engagement. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. But the chances go up dramatically of you being institutionalized as an adult if you're institutionalized as a juvenile. Generally, you make it to 18, 19, 20, it becomes more difficult, not impossible, for you to get entangled. So one of the things is really important for y'all to know, Black people. This is really, really, really important. This ain't just no science stuff or for you to get a good grade tonight. It's really important to understand science because, the present in so many ways determines the future. one of the things that I try and ask students is, what do you want to be doing 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? You can change your mind if you want to, Davicia. But if you have a certain future for yourself in mind, like, it's really important that you understand how the present plays a major role in that. And y'all
So,
are all,
like-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Janai.
Apologies.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so like say for example, you know the whole stuff that happened with the Capitol. Could you say, I mean, even though it hasn't happened, but like you said, the present determines the future or whatever. So say for instance that being without it happening, it's gonna be like a rough presidency for Joe.
I don't know that it'll be a rough presidency, but I do know for I do know for sure. I do know for sure. Well, I won't say I know for sure. I don't think that will be the last time that we will see a scene like that.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think unless we start to get things under control, like if the police deal with these issues in the way that they have dealt with, like people selling crack cocaine or something like that, if they deal with like that, then we can kind of like, get this under control, because it's really not that difficult. But otherwise, I predict that yes, not only will we see a scene like that duplicated, like we're going to see way more people get killed at some point.
Okay.
But like that's a great example. When that was happening on January 6th, and I would even encourage you to talk to some of your other professors, I wasn't surprised about that. Like, and if you watch the news reports, like it was very predictable. I mean, hell, dude, like people was on TV and on social media telling you what they was gonna do, dog. So whatever. But yeah. So, but even beyond that, also, while we'll see more stuff like that, Janiyah, there's been different points in history. So I'm sure you all are aware of the history of lynching in America, right? Of like back like in the 1880s to like 1920, there were massive amounts of Black people lynched in America. There have been periods throughout history, and do your own research on this, where more violence has increased, and particularly against Black people, as Black people become more empowered. So as we see people like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris getting more institutionalized power, there are going to be more and more people that are historically the pattern has been in America that there's been a large backlash of violence after that has happened. So I think that we will see some of that. But as far as the actual governance and stuff like that, the people that were storming into the Capitol, they don't have as much political power right now. So it's a lot of stuff that they're just going to have to be mad about. But so with climate change, right, one of the reasons why we're really trying to address this now is that if we don't do it in the present in 2020, 2050, 2070 can be really, really bad. Alzheimer's disease, I did not know this until a few years ago, Davicia, but it affects Black people. Well, almost every health illness does, unfortunately. But Black people get Alzheimer's at higher rates. And one of the things that we have found, and this has been recent science, because again, science is always evolving. It's not like, okay, we do something scientific and we get it all figured out in 2020. We're continually experimenting and learning more things. So one of the things we've learned about Alzheimer's is that as opposed to it being something that's just inevitable, it happens when you're old, a lot of it actually is related to our diets when we're young. So really, really be mindful of those kind of things. So even Alzheimer's, a lot of it is related to our activity when we're young. It's not just something that just happens and is inevitable associated with old age. So again, these are the kind of things you want to like really be informed about. STDs, again, like I hope that you all are aware. I'm sure we got a bunch of celibate people here, but Columbia, South Carolina has one of the highest rates of STDs and HIV in particular in the whole entire country. So you can predict, again, like if that goes unchecked, how that might impact our community going into the future. Fortunately, we are aware of this, and there are a lot of efforts being made to combat and subvert this rate. And I think that ultimately we'll be successful in pushing it back. Present relationships that evolve into marriage, again, like, so even with relationships, people be thinking that, hey, like this person will change or this, that will change. Keep in mind, Nashia, that oftentimes the person that you're meeting now, that's who they're going to be like, again, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Keep these kind of things in mind. because what we want to use is our skills of observation to make sense of the scientific world. Previously, the way, like for most of human history, the way that we've gotten information and we've decided what's real is through tradition and authority. What this speaks to is that traditional beliefs that because your mother believed this, your grandma believed this, your great grandma believed this, you're gonna believe it too. And then authority, well, I believe it because the president said, because the chief of police said it, because my professor said so, because my preacher said so, because my father said so. What we want to do again is for, like, you know, not because somebody else, and this is why I have told you since I met you, Nashaya, to do your own research, because I don't want you taking my word for stuff just because I'm a so-called authority figure in the class. The authority is going to be truth and information. So here are some ideas that have since been outdated that we once believed were true. It was once believed, and you ain't got to write all this stuff down. You can if you want to. I'm not going to test you on all this. This is just to make a larger point. Because if you don't understand, like, you know, because the main thing, what happens a lot of times, right, is I'll be talking on and people ignore me or got other stuff going on. And you write this stuff down, but you don't really understand the concepts. So can somebody explain to me, like in looking at the slide, somebody explain to me what I'm getting ready to lay out for you here. Look at the slide and actually try and explain what you're writing down related to the previous point that was made. What are you writing down here? Explain it to me, young people.
Is this secondhand knowledge?
Say again.
Is this secondhand knowledge?
Good. And where did it come from? Where did the secondhand knowledge come from?
Based off theory.
Who is the source of this secondhand knowledge?
You?
Nope.
I mean, not you, but
so these are different
Personal
ideas. These are ideas that have been promoted over time, or concepts that have been framed in certain ways over time. I'll elaborate on things like the Holocaust, big hits in the NFL, etc. But so I'll give you, for example, with big hits in the NFL. You all, have anybody seen the Will Smith film Concussion?
Nope.
No, sir.
You probably have. It's been a few years, but it was a film where he played this African doctor. He was a neurosurgeon. And he was a dude that discovered that, like, playing football, like, it does major damage to your brain. Because, like, you know, all this moving back and forth and hitting things really hard, like since you're 6 years old, that's not very natural. So, like, they gave an example, right? Like a woodpecker. So a woodpecker be, and it'd be like, you know, like if you do that, I'll tell, like, your brain is like rattling, right? But God has designed a woodpecker where their brain is where it's attached. Every time that a human is getting hit like that, like your brain is like moving around inside, dog, and that's not really natural. And then it's taking all types of hits. So it made it where these dudes is playing professional football and stuff, Latasia, and they're like 30 years old, but they got the brain of a 75-year-old. But the NFL, they said that, hey, no, football doesn't cause that. Like, so the neurosurgeon, right, he's looking at like, hey, here are like 5 brains of former football players. And here go like 5 brains of like really 70-year-old people. And these guys' brains is worse. Like, and then like Janai, you look at other variables. Well, maybe it's this. Well, maybe it's this. Well, maybe it's that. They looked at all those things. You know what it was? Football and taking all that punishment was causing, you know, certain damage to their brain. The NFL denied this. Why do you think the NFL denied it? Don't overthink it.
Because if they don't, then they ain't gonna have no football players. I mean, they'll quit.
no money.
They'll be liable. If I'm responsible for you getting hurt, you can sue me, or I may have to pay for your medical costs. So the NFL was like, look, we don't want to be held medically responsible for all these cast injuries. So we're gonna say no, football had nothing to do with it. But you know what shows that they don't really believe that? They totally changed. I know, and again, I apologize. I know y'all may not be hardcore football fans, but the point is not about football. It's about the science of the brain. And that they knew that the authority figures, the NFL league, the authority figures, they knew this information. but they denied it because they had the power to do so. So what you want to look at, again, people who have like, corporate power of educators like myself, people who run churches, religious leaders, they have a lot of power to shape our ideas. Your parents, your clergymen, so not all those people mean you any harm. Your parents may, there are all types of things that my parents have told me where they have meant me well, and it turned out that they were wrong. It happens. So as opposed to tradition and authority being the source of your information or the source of your knowledge, who I would like for you to be the source of your knowledge? You. Like, don't take my word, don't take this person's word. Like, you need to be the authority. Because sometimes people like the NFL, they'll just tell you anything. Let's look at some other examples. So it was believed forever. The Catholic Church told everybody, the world is not round, the world is flat. And people just believe them because, hey, that's what everybody else said, the world is flat, so the world must be flat. They told you, Latasia, you're supposed to be a slave. It says it right here in the Bible, right? We believe for many women ain't supposed to be voting. The only thing women are supposed to be doing is cooking and cleaning, right? Who made up that rule?
Must be a man.
Yeah,
Male society.
a male-dominated society like 100,000 years ago. The Holocaust, again, that we have to, the authority figure said, hey, these Jewish people, they're destroying our society. We need to, again, eradicate them. Medical marijuana. So again, for many years, like the authority figures told you, oh my God, marijuana is so awful, it's a gateway drug. Like you're gonna do crack if you start doing marijuana in the Shire. But now, state after state after state is legalizing marijuana. Isn't it interesting? So again, right, authority figures, they be changing stuff all the time. What you want to look at again, so you want to look at the science of what marijuana does. Don't just, and it's not suggesting like, that, everybody should go out and start smoking weed. Some of y'all need to stop tonight. What?
I was gonna say some people will say like it will decrease like your stress, like lower your stress levels.
Absolutely right. I totally understand. Like if it were up to me, almost everything would be legal, but you got to know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for I'll have a casual drink every now and again, but I know some of my friends and stuff that could drink me under the table. I can't get down like them. So you got to know your limits. But in all seriousness, the health dangers of marijuana were always greatly exaggerated, and the science has now caught up to the reality. But people lives were ruined because of that lie. Like you had people being put in jail, people being stigmatized, and over something that wasn't really real. So let's go back to our original question. How do we decide what's real? So how do we decide that it's real that marijuana is harmful or it's not? Again, do your own research on this, but the main thing was the people in power had the authority to say, this is bad for you and you shouldn't do it. But as we have relied on science, that turned out not to be the case as much. Sexual assault, again, where these type of things have gone on for generations, where all types of things where women were subjected to all types of abuse that would be swept under the table. Why? Because it was a male-dominated society, and half the time, Latasia, if you tried to say that this male did, that your boss did something, that your preacher did something, that they wouldn't believe you, because women, again, weren't considered to be equal. These are all types of ridiculous ideas that were passed down from generation to generation, and then a lot of people accepted because they came from tradition. Again, tradition means that, hey, this is just what we believe, so we're going to keep on doing it. And authority. This important person said it was true, so I'm going to believe them. I want you to believe yourself. If you don't get nothing else from this class, please get that. A lot here, so I'm going to let y'all take some notes, and then I'm going to I'll catch up with dialogue. I'm going to go grab me another Red Bull real quick, okay, Janai?
I'm bad for you.
VC back up.
I'm trying to look at something. You in my business? Dog, I
work.
look big on this camera. Yeah.
And use the Red Bull example, right?
Yep.
I told you one of the reasons why Janiyah was able to make that conclusion that or form that hypothesis is through her observations. Keep that in mind. Like she has seen with her own eyes me drinking Red Bull maybe once or twice.
I already took them notes.
And when we talk about accurate observations, Devicia, it's one thing to say, okay, I saw Dr. Muhammad drinking Red Bulls a lot, as opposed to if you take notes and you record every single time I drink a Red Bull. Y'all see what I'm saying? And so it's different from saying he drinks Red Bull a lot to I saw Dr. Muhammad drink 44 Red Bulls in 23 classes this semester. Keep in mind, Janiyah, what I said about empirical. It usually comes in the form of what? What when we say something is empirical, what form is it? Say it again. Yes. Keep that in mind for y'all final research.
Say that again. You kept going in and out.
So when we look for something empirical, it usually comes in the form of numbers. It's not enough for Nashaya to tell me that she's healthy. What are the numbers that support that she's healthy? Don't just tell me that you're a good student. What are the numbers that show that? As we'll talk about later on, that's not always a perfect measure, a perfect way of assessing things, but we'll talk about that later on. Continue taking notes. And keep in mind, what's our primary focus this chapter, right? Determining what's real, determining what's real, determining what's real, determining what's real. Don't tell me it's cold or hot, Devicia. What's the temperature? Let me determine for myself if it's cold or hot.
It's all right.
What's hot for you as a South Carolinian may be very different from me as a Chicagoan.
How you know I'm from South Carolina?
I don't. That's a fair point. Yeah, my girl over the weekend, she's like, it's cold. And I'm like, really? Like, and it was chilly, but like, again, like the cold in the Carolinas is a very different animal from cold in Chicago. Does that mean that she was wrong? No. But in science, we want to be precise. So don't tell me more rain. Tell me the exact amount of rain. This came from a real example, Diamond. Well, one day, like, I asked her, like, hey, how long is dinner gonna be ready? Oh, it'll be ready real quick. Now, I'm sure y'all may be familiar with CP time. And I'm absolutely like, checking for, a colored girl every day of the week. So sometimes real quick amongst our people can mean different things, correct? So don't tell me
30 minutes.
Now, so don't tell me real quick. Give me an exact time. Do y'all understand what I'm saying here? I make light of it now But in your research, these are the kind of precision, this is the way that you have to get used to speaking. Don't be vague, be very specific with your measurements, all right? You also want to make sure, so again, don't be like, okay, if you were to make a scientific statement, it would not be sufficient to say, I see Dr. Muhammad drink a lot of Red Bull. It has to be, I saw him drink 35 Red Bulls, and I only saw my other professors drink 5 Red Bulls combined. We also want to be careful about overgeneralizations. A lot of times, right, because like I said, Janiyah, we want to like relate science to your observations. However, a lot of times people observe things, with their minds will play tricks on them, or they'll overemphasize what they have observed. So for example, tell me about a city that you've traveled to on vacation, anybody? I know it's been a while since anybody's been able to travel, but when the world was open, tell me about a place that you've been.
Florida.
Outside of your hometown.
Atlanta.
So how many times have you been in Atlanta?
Twice.
So give me some of your some of the things that you observed, or give me just your general take of the city.
The real country, rest in that accent. Not country in a bad way, but you know what I mean.
Right. Good.
It's real busy, traffic heavy.
Good.
They got a lot of activities to do within there.
Good. I think all of those are very accurate observations. So like one, she was able to base that off of like traffic that she compared to other cities that she's seen. She based her accent like probably not just off of 1 or 2 people, but she probably went to several different places and heard people talking this way. Because a lot of times, Janiyah, people make these kind of generalizations off of very limited information. We see this, for example, across races, that somebody may have seen only 1 or 2 Black people their whole life. And they base all Black people's behavior off of those 2 Black people that they saw. So we have to be very careful about those things. And every group does that. Every group does this. We talked about this last time, how like y'all be making all type of overgeneralizations about men, and dudes, I know as dudes, we probably do that sometimes about y'all. So y'all, I'm sure all of y'all at some point, or some of y'all probably said, all men do this. Give me one. What's something that y'all think that all men do or don't do?
Lie.
All men
Lie and cheat.
Now, I would not say that all. As a man, I will say a lot of us do. That is probably fair. Although, to be fair, Latasia, a lot of human beings cheat. It ain't just us, goddammit.
Not the females.
But like, so we can say something like on average, women will talk more than men. Are there exceptions? Of course.
Yeah.
But generally, like, y'all conversations are a lot more engrossing than like, like dudes like, hey, what's up, dog? We're not really talking on the phone, all that stuff and everything.
I don't see some men that are like, we can show like actual affection, but I feel like it's based on other stuff though, like environment and how you was raised, single parent, whatever.
Absolutely, no question. Because I think that generalization is a little bit like overblown, where like me and my guys.
Yeah, that's like the male expectation though.
It's absolutely excellent point. Because a lot of times, like even amongst myself, I know like I'll talk a lot more freely amongst my female friends than like I will like amongst my guys and stuff. See, a lot of that is based upon culture. And these are the things we got to keep in mind when we make overgeneralization. So when we talk about science, Latasia, what we mainly talk about is what happens routinely. So for the most part, it takes 9 months for a baby to come to term. For the most part, it rarely snows in South Carolina. For the most part, airplanes don't crash. For the most part, it doesn't rain in Southern California. But there are always exceptions. So what we want to look at in science is what normally happens, And for your research projects, you're going to be speaking to what normally happens or explain why some exceptions occur. But to do this, you have to replicate stuff. Like, so in science, Davicia, you want to replicate. So like in doing the vaccine and rolling out this vaccine and stuff, right? A concern, and again, like, I trust the scientific community, I do, but generally it takes years before a vaccine is rolled out because they need to replicate these processes many times. They need to make sure, like, okay, look, we gave it to one round, everything worked out good for 3 months. Let's do it again in 6 more months. Let's do it again in another year. Like, to make sure that every single time that they've done this, that they get the same things. They want to eliminate these exceptions as early on in the processes as possible. So we want to do this in social science as well. A couple more points before we break out for the day. I appreciate y'all hanging in here with me. Are there any questions so far? And look, you ain't got to write none of this down. In fact, please don't write none of this down. What was our first focus in this chapter? What was the first objective when we began this chapter? You can look back.
Scientific thinking.
And to determine what? Using
What?
True, but look at the screen.
Identify different ways to decide. Oh, what's real?
Oh yeah, what's real?
So science is how we use that. But in spite of that, it'd be all types of misinformation out here. So some people, for example, will get the notion that all white people are rich. Is that real?
No, you got some people on EBT and stuff.
Absolutely.
Majority.
Most people who are EBT are actually white. Do your own research. I could be making it up, but that's a fact. So it is true that most rich Americans are white, but with over 197 million whites in America, clearly most white people are not rich. All Mexicans are immigrants. Is that real? No.
No.
That most of the Mexican people you see, dog, was actually born in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a really exciting one. People are gay because they have been molested.
No.
This is not real. And please, like I said, before, there are many mental health disorders. So just because you have some bad moods sometimes, Nashaya, that don't mean that you bipolar, okay?
Yes, sir.
Just because, just because you feel sad sometimes does not necessarily mean that you're depressed.
Right.
These are very specific things. Y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
And it's important to know that because there may be a time where you really are depressed and you ain't just sad, and you need to know that.
Yeah.
So keep these things in mind. As it relates to as it relates to these things here, right? A lot of people confuse and mix up pedophilia and homosexuality, but they're two different things. Like, so pedophilia, right? Like, again, these are people that want to have sex with children of any gender. It ain't just about, being gay. And then the common notion is that the effect of being molested as a child is going to so confuse this child where they're going to be homosexual as an adult. But the vast majority of gays report no instance of being sexually assaulted in their lives. And unfortunately, we have a lot of data on people that have been molested. I'm sure y'all may not be familiar because y'all probably was little kids when this is happening. But there was a major Catholic Church scandal that came out a few years back where 50, 60, 70,000 kids across a couple of decades have been molested. And the vast majority of them, they had some mental health disorders, but they were heterosexual people, had families of their own. Like I said, they had other things to deal with, but they did not become homosexual. Black people abuse welfare. As I told you before, Janiyah, most food stamps and Medicaid is actually received by white people. Now, the people that vote for Trump and people that was opposing Obamacare, they believe in their minds that most people who abuse welfare are Black. A lot of Black people believe this. It's not the reality. Do your own research, but it's not. So it's really important, right? Because when we have bad information, it causes us to create bad laws. It causes us to make bad decisions as individuals. So really accurate information is so vitally important. Like, but in my view, Janiyah, for example, right? Because the perception of who is on welfare is Black, the perception that most people on welfare are Black, they don't give as many benefits to people as they should. Like if they knew the reality, they probably would help people more, but they want to be so difficult to us that they like try and squeeze those people out. And in reality, man, you're really screwing out, some of your own. Not that it should even be looked at like that, but keep in mind, reality. Oftentimes, we avoid looking for deviant cases. So I know a lot of people like will be like Janiyah was trying to do, where she want to drop out of school right before her final semester. I'm just kidding. She would never. Me and Janiyah would fight before I would let her do that. But I'm sure we've heard, like, and let me be clear, college is not for everybody. College is not for everybody. But a lot of people say, well, hey, college don't even matter. That's not real. And they will say that college don't matter or you don't need to go to college by pointing to somebody like Jay-Z or Bill Gates. But those are the exceptions. And it's true that, yeah, Jay-Z never went to college. Bill Gates went. He did not graduate. I think he's gotten his degree since then, but he started doing his computer thing at Harvard on Division, and he was going to school at Harvard, a pretty decent school. And he's like, oh shit, I'm up, dog. I'm finna get paid. And excellent choice. However, most of us do not have the talents and skills of a young Jay-Z or Bill Gates, and we probably want to stay in college. I know this guy who developed mental issues from smoking marijuana, so marijuana causes mental issues. That's true, right? No. Now, it may be true, Devicia. For example, like I do know a dude who went to school with us in high school, and he got a hold of some bad stuff, and it messed him up pretty bad. But you know what's also true? I know probably like 2,000 other people that smoked weed and nothing happened to them. So what do we look at again in science?
What's real?
Now, what normally happens? Because both things are real. Both things are real. Like that really did happen to dude, but that's one person. That does not suggest that that's what's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah.
The same way, with the vaccines and stuff, and feel how you feel about the vaccine. I'm still a mixed bag myself. But if one person is harmed by the vaccine, that don't mean that it's harmful for everybody. That's like saying because one person dies in childbirth this year, and somebody is going to die in childbirth this year, that you shouldn't have babies because it's too dangerous. What we want to look at is what normally happens. You don't want to you want to be informed about the bad things, but a lot of times, Latasia, people will avoid doing things because they overstate the risk. Like I've heard people say that they ain't going, they saw the movie Taken, and because people get abducted overseas, they're not going to travel overseas. God damn it. For one, that's a movie. For two, like 99.9.8% of people who travel overseas ain't gonna get abducted, dog. Three, I can assure you, you're in probably one of the most dangerous countries in the world right now. Y'all do understand that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. They got that on this stuff. Like my mother would often freak out and shy about me leaving the country and stuff. And I would have to remind her that I grew up in Chicago.
Right.
Look, all due respect, I promise you, I'm going to a safer place. I'm gonna skip past this because it's not as important to what we want to discuss. For this particular class, I may come back to it, but I don't want to bog us down right now. I do want to close on this note. And if there are any questions, please let me know. But what was our initial focus in this class? What was the first thing we were trying to focus on? The first objective. To determine what?
What's real?
Yes. And as we go through this, right, has anybody begun to think about what they might want to research in here, like your general topic?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Go ahead.
I said, ask me, not I was thinking.
Well, when you finish the mission, you let me know. Anybody? What? Tell me a topic, like a general topic. You ain't gotta have be. It ain't gotta be your final topic yet. But I hope y'all at least giving it some thought so far.
Does it have to be like social issue?
It has to be related to. It got to be related to human behavior. It does not have to be related to social issues. No.
Human behavior. Okay.
So anybody?
I
Come on, y'all.
don't know if my
Count
subject.
one.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Who's about to say? Go ahead. You got it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Janai. Oh,
Okay, so boom, I was thinking based off the fact that COVID and stuff going on, like it's been a higher increase like in violence, like suicide, and I had wrote something else down, but yeah, that's a little snippet of what I was thinking about.
Interesting. So I have not delved into this research very deeply, Janaya, but I do know I have seen that there have been a relationship between COVID and mental health.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at suicide in particular, I think yes, that would be a good relationship. And let's start with Janaya's example, right?
Huh? Sorry, I'm sorry.
Now give me 1 second. I gotta mute y'all. Bear with me, y'all. I'm sorry. Okay, so and y'all gotta let me know if y'all need me to unmute y'all. I have to mute everybody real quick because there's too much air in the background. Raise your hand if you need me to unmute you. So looking at Janaya's example, right, and looking at the relationship again, we talked about variables last week. A relationship. These variables going to have a relationship. So Janaya is thinking about the relationship between COVID and suicide rates. Those are your two variables. Suicide rate can have a number to it, Janaya. Again, that's empirical, Janaya. So you can have a number for suicide rate, and we can look at that with the relationship in COVID.
Is it possible to have like more than one?
Absolutely, yes, definitely you can. Now, I don't want you to have too many, but you can definitely have more than one. Mm-hmm. Some of it you're going to have to save for graduate school. Only because I want y'all to do a lot. I want you to do enough where it's going to really push you, but I don't want you overexerting yourself either. Because you getting ready to go do a little bit of work along the way.
Okay, well, before you end the call later on, like when everybody goes, can I talk to you about it a little bit further in detail?
Yeah, absolutely.
It ain't gonna take too long.
Absolutely, most definitely. So with this, right, some of the things that kind of like, Janaya's already following some of these steps. The foundation of all this, right, is logic and observation. So as you start to think about your research topic, I want you to begin with things that you probably have already observed. And then just things that make sense. So it makes like, why might it make sense that people might feel more suicidal during this time? Anybody? You may have to unmute yourself.
I guess because they feel alone.
Right.
They're not able to find their family.
Exactly. That's real basic, right? Every human being is experiencing this. Some are more isolated than others, but I know like normally I would go home, I would go to the Chi in December, or at least for Thanksgiving, and not being able to do that, like that sucked. It was difficult. I'm still pretty well connected. I got family down in Atlanta that I've been able to go check on and stuff like that. But I know for a lot of people and stuff where just the isolation has been very, very difficult. So it's natural. It makes logical sense, right, that people might feel more suicidal during this period. Janaya hasn't done the research yet. She just has an educated guess about it. So she would have to go do the research to find out the extent that that's true. So the first thing that you want to look at, whatever your topic is, no, it does not have to be anything super like serious or super world changing at all. I really want it to be something that you're interested in more than anything else. So why does it seem logical that children who were abused will become abusive parents? Why, or does that seem logical to you?
Repeat that one more time.
Anybody?
Because that's something that they used to, they think is normal.
Right. And again, that's what they have been normalized with. That's what they've observed. So yes, it's all of us have been young people before, and all types of things that we have picked up from our parents, we begin to adapt as adults. It just makes sense. Now, here's before we go, and I'm again with the sleepy one on Thursday. But if we believe that there's a relationship between if you were abused as a child and you becoming abusive as a parent, if we think that there's a relationship between those two things, how can we observe it? Don't overthink it. Listen to exactly what I'm asking you. How can we, because it could be right that Davicia be beating the hell out of her kids and her mom was always nice and sweet to her. So we can't assume that Davicia is an abusive parent because she was abused as a child. So, but how can we observe if these things really play a role? How might we observe this? You know, think outside the box. No wrong answers. How can we observe that the reason why she's an abusive parent is because she was an abused child? How can we observe that to see that that is what the cause and effect is, and it's not something else? Maybe she played really violent video games or something. How can we
I was
observe?
about to say like her actions. Like,
Yeah.
what she partake in.
But if we see her actions, what does that tell us about the cause of the actions? All we see is
can
her
you get
abusing her
feedback
kids.
from her relatives or something, like people that she grew up around? Would that count?
Okay, good. There we go. Good. That the best way to observe it, Janiyah, would be people have to actually see. Like, so if she had a brother that was around the same age and saw how they were treated, and then grows up and sees how she's, and a child may be able to make, you know what? That's the same thing mom was doing to us. But for the most part, it's going to be very difficult for people to see those relationships, right? Because they're not going to be able to see the whole picture. Keep this in mind when you're doing your own social research, that you're going to make some conclusions in this class about things, but your observations are probably going to be very limited. You ain't going to be able to observe, like, you know, what happened in that abused parent, what happened in every day of their life. That doesn't mean that you can't still get into a relationship, but what it does show is that you want to make sure that your method in making a conclusion is as sound as possible. Because if you're going to say that Nashia is an abusive parent because she was abused as a child, you want to make sure that you really got enough evidence before you make that claim, right?
Right.
That's a pretty serious charge, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we want to be really clear about what we're saying, and we want to be clear about how we're observing our empirical findings. I know I hit y'all with a lot today. I've recorded this lecture. I'm going to try really hard to upload it. I'm going to get them uploaded eventually. Bear with me. And if you need to review anything, let me know. Janiyah, I'm going to use the same exact link, and I'm going to hit you up. And it takes about 5 minutes for this to save. So I'm going to put you back in at like 2:20, okay?
Okay, that's cool.
Does that work?
Yes, sir. That's cool.
Okay, cool beans. Anybody else got any questions before we break for the day? Start hitting those books. Make sure that you, again, start working on assignment 1. I hope, so Janiyah has some research ideas. I hope I hear some more by Thursday.
Yes, sir.
And remember, Davicia, you'll need to remain on camera like you are today to get full attendance. And we're going to start at 1 o'clock, all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Y'all have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.